Single Dad returned to his abandoned farmhouse and found 3 strangers who changed his life. Walter Chen hadn't driven down Maple Ridge Road in 12 years. Not since the morning he'd packed up his daughter Lily and left the farmhouse behind, unable to face another day in the home where his wife had taken her last breath. He was 56 now. Lily was grown, working as a nurse in Portland. And the farmhouse, well, his cousin had been calling about it for months. "You should sell it, Walter. It's just sitting there." She was right, of course. It was time. The October morning was crisp when Walter pulled into the gravel driveway. Leaves had gathered against the porch steps. The mailbox leaned at an angle. He took a deep breath and walked toward the front door, fishing the old key from his pocket. But when he turned the knob, the door was already unlocked. Walter's heart quickened. He pushed the door open slowly. The smell hit him first. Not dust and abandonment, but something else. Soup, maybe, and wood smoke. Someone had been here. Someone was still here. "Hello?" He called out, his voice echoing through the hallway. A woman appeared at the end of the hall. She was perhaps 60, with silver hair and a weathered face that spoke of hard years. Her eyes went wide when she saw him. "Oh," she breathed. "Oh, I'm so sorry." Within moments, 2 others appeared behind her. An older man, maybe 75, thin and stoop-shouldered, and a younger woman, pregnant, who looked barely 30. Walter should have called the police, should have been angry, but something in their faces stopped him. Not defiance, but pure, quiet fear of being cast out into the cold. "I'm Betty," the older woman said softly. "This is Harold and this is Annie. We didn't mean any harm. We had nowhere to go." They sat at his old kitchen table, the one his wife Caroline had refinished by hand, and the story unfolded slowly, carefully. Betty had been evicted when her building was condemned. Harold had lost his farm 3 years ago and had been drifting since his children stopped calling. Annie had fled an abusive marriage with nothing but the clothes on her back and a baby on the way. They'd found the farmhouse empty 6 months ago. Just one night they'd promised themselves. Then another. They'd made small repairs. Kept it clean, made it a home again. "We'll leave today," Betty said, her voice steady but her hands shaking slightly around her coffee cup. "We've been setting aside a little money." "We'll find something." Walter looked around the kitchen. The window he'd meant to fix was repaired. The cracked tile by the sink had been replaced. Someone had oiled the squeaky cabinet doors. Through the window he could see the garden. Not Caroline's old flower beds, but neat rows of vegetables ready for harvest. "I came here to sell this place," Walter said quietly. They nodded, waiting for the inevitable. "But I wonder—" He paused, surprised by his own words. "Would you mind if I stayed for a few days? Helped with the winterizing?" Betty blinked. "I don't understand." "This house has been empty too long," Walter said. "My wife Caroline, she always said a home dies when there's no one to care for it. You've been caring for it?" He looked at each of them. "Maybe we could care for it together." The days that followed were unlike anything Walter had expected. Harold taught him how to repair the old storm windows properly, something Walter had always done wrong. Betty's cooking filled the house with warmth and laughter again. Annie, despite her condition, worked alongside them, painting the spare bedroom that would become the nursery. Walter found himself looking forward to mornings again, to Harold's terrible jokes over breakfast, to Betty's stories about her grandchildren she hoped to see again someday, to Annie's quiet presence as she knitted tiny booties by the fire. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the barn, Harold said, "You know, Walter, you didn't have to do this." "We were trespassers," Walter shook his head. "You were caretakers." "There's a difference." He paused. "After Caroline died, I ran from this place. I thought the memories would hurt less if I wasn't here. But you know what I found?" "What's that?" Betty asked softly. "The memories followed me anyway. And the house just sat here, dying slowly, while I tried to forget." He looked at the 3 of them. "You brought it back to life. That's what Caroline would have wanted." "She must have been a wonderful woman," Annie said. "She was," Walter smiled. "She used to say that love isn't something you keep in your pocket. It's something you give away, and somehow it always comes back." When winter came, Walter made it official. The farmhouse wasn't for sale. He moved back in permanently, taking the upstairs bedroom while the others stayed below. They formed an unlikely family, bound not by blood but by need, by circumstance and by choice. Annie's daughter was born in February. Delivered at the county hospital with Betty holding her hand and Walter pacing in the waiting room like an anxious grandfather. They named her Caroline. Lily came to visit that spring. She found her father in the garden teaching Harold's grandson, who had finally reached out, how to plant tomatoes the way his grandmother used to. "Dad," she said, tears in her eyes. "You look different." "I feel different," Walter said. "I spent 12 years running from this place because it reminded me of everything I'd lost. And then I came back and found everything I needed." "Mom would be proud," Lily whispered. Walter looked at the farmhouse, at Betty hanging laundry on the line, at Annie rocking baby Caroline on the porch, at Harold fixing the fence with steady, purposeful hands. "Your mother always knew," he said. "Home isn't a place you leave behind. It's the people who choose to stay, who choose to care, who choose each other day after day." That evening, they all gathered around the old kitchen table for dinner. 7 people who had been strangers, now family. And in the warmth of that yellow kitchen, with laughter bouncing off the walls and love filling every corner, Walter Chen finally understood what he'd been searching for all along. Sometimes you have to lose everything to find what matters most. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give is simply opening the door and saying, "Welcome home, the end."